What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Daily Fantasy Digest podcast, the all-inclusive podcast where we talk all things fantasy sports to help give you an edge. Once again, I'm your host, Joe Beware, and today I'm going to be breaking down the 5-game MLB slate on May 9th. It is a very small slate, kind of a weird day. Still going to want to get a breakdown out to you guys, though, because this slate is actually really interesting with the kind of balanced pitching that we have going on. Relatively, everybody's around the same price range, so I want to give you my thoughts on high price and low price and see who we want to go with. So for cash games, we'll get to GPPs later, but for cash games, I think that Patrick Corbin, even given the matchup, is too underpriced. Just for the sort of stats that he's been pumping out lately, it's quite ridiculous. He's just been sporting a 3.71 ERA, 50 Ks on the season. Looking at his numbers, 3.77 xFib, only 34% hard contact rate with a 43.5% ground ball rate and a 40% fly ball rate, which is a little concerning, but not too concerning with only 13% home run rate. I think Corbin's going to be the guy that you're going to want to pay up for, if any. If we go back over to the pitchers, Rich Hill has gotten dominated. He's not been the same Rich Hill as before. And Mike Minor has been absolutely terrible to start the season, and only as of late has he come into somewhat of a rare form that we have not seen before, but I see that having to regress soon, and I think when we go to talk about bat stacks later, that's where we're going to want to see some regression. Now, for a lower-priced SP2 for cash games, I really like Luke Weaver. I think if you look at his numbers this year, 3.38 xFib, 45% hard contact rate, which is a little concerning. Not going to be it is going to be concerning, but for 8K, he seems a little underpriced for the fantasy points he's been putting up as of recent. Ground ball rate of 45.2% and only an 11.1% home run rate. If we go ahead and we look at recent games, Weaver's been dominant. Went into Coors Field, pitched 7 innings, 8 Ks, 31.4 Draftkings points. Had a little hiccup at home against Chicago, but I don't see that being an issue here against Atlanta, who hasn't been putting up the hottest numbers. Outside of Ozzie Albies, there's not really anybody that really concerns me as far as hitters that are going to be able to really take on Weaver. Maybe Freddie Freeman, but I don't really see that being an issue. I see this being a lower scoring game. So for GPP pitchers, a place that you can look at that I'm not happy about looking is Michael Wacha. Hasn't had the best games recently. Had a hiccup against the Cubs, but went into Milwaukee and Miller Park and pitched out of a game, 7 Ks through 6 innings. Same with going into Washington, 15.1 Draftkings points. I think that these are indicative of what could come because Pittsburgh is not that great of a hitting team. We all know that they only have a few weapons, to be honest, and I'm pretty sure that Wacha's ERA is not really indicative of the kind of performance that he can put up, especially at a price tag of $7,600. And if you want to get some of the bat stacks in that I'm going to be speaking about later in this video, I think that you're going to have to pay down a little bit. You'll be able to do it with Weaver and Corbin, but I think it'll be a little bit easier if you pay down for somebody as well. If we just run over the numbers really quick, 4.83 xFib, 33% hard contact rate, which is pretty low, a 44.8% ground ball rate, and a 34.5% rate as well for fly balls. Only a 20% home run rate, which is a little scary, but there's not really anybody on the Pirates other than Starling Marte or Polanco that really make me want to fade Wacha. But for me, Wacha is strictly a GPP play. And then moving on to my last GPP play for me is Mike Soroka. Not too... I can't really gauge how well it's going to go against Arizona. They're a very streaky team, and I can't really tell and gauge the performance. The price, $9,000, seems fair for the numbers that he's been putting up, but Arizona is a pretty good hitting team. They're pretty stacked with David Peralta, Eduardo Escobar, Adam Jones, Ketel Marte. They have the weapons to be able to put up some runs on some pretty good pitchers. So for me, I'm not too excited about paying up for Mike Soroka with a 3.04 xFib, very low hard contact rate, and a very high ground ball rate. Hasn't given up a homer yet this season, but for me, just personally, I think Soroka's more of a GPP play, and that Corbin's going to be the lock for me in cash games. So yeah, those are going to be my 4 pitchers, but I think this is how my lineup's going to look come lock time as far as pitchers tomorrow. I feel a lot more safer with Weaver and his production, as well as Corbin and his strikeout upside, especially against a LA team who strikes out pretty heavily, other than last night when Justin Turner hits 3 home runs in a game, but I don't see that happening against Corbin. Corbin's numbers this season have just been ridiculous, so I think that continues tonight. Moving on to bat stacks. I mentioned earlier Mike Minor regressing, and I think that is going to happen. If you look at his past performances, it's been pretty insane. A 30-point performance, a 40, then a little regression against Oakland, only 6 innings with 4 earned runs. But the K upside has been incredible from Minor so far. But if you look back to the start, you have a little bit of a hiccup. And I think that could happen, especially at home, with how we know George Springer is against leadoff hitters. And I think that they're priced appropriately, which is why I think that you might have to pick your bat stacks wisely, or at least your people wisely. I think George Springer is probably, for me, the biggest lock of a player. Hitting leadoff like he always does. He's absolutely incredible against lefties, and is just going to mash in the leadoff spot. So I think he is a lock for me. It doesn't really take down the average remaining player too much. But for me, I think you could go Bregman. I think he's a little underpriced at $4,700. I think that's it's fair, but to me, a little underpriced. He should be roughly around the same range as George Springer. And then for me as well, another player that I love tomorrow is Jose Altuve, who is sitting at $4,300. It doesn't make any sense to me. I know he's been on a little bit of a cold spree lately, but I think that he's somebody that you can just literally plug and play into the lineup, and it's going to be giving you that upside that you need. If I click over on Houston, another player I want to look at lastly for this stack is Robinson Chirinos, who I will assume will play tomorrow due to the lefty bat. Chirinos has been absolutely incredible this season at catcher, and 3.5K is a little bit too low, especially when catcher is quite not heavy, but if you look at Gary Sanchez at 5.3K, Molina at 4.2K, getting somebody down in the lower end like Chirinos at 3.5K with the same upside that those guys have, I think is going to really pay off tomorrow. On the flip side, as you have Wade Miley pitching, I don't see how you can't or wouldn't stack every Rangers player other than for price reasons. For me, part of the stack, Joey Gallo has been absolutely incredible, hitting homer after homer, just moonshots in every game so far. 5.4K actually seems properly priced, but if it was higher, I think I would still pay. I think Gallo is an absolute must-play tomorrow, in my opinion. Texas has been paying off for people all season. They've been scoring runs left and right. The lineup is pretty deadly as far as hitters. I think another hitter you can go for is Elvis Andrus, Chu as well at 5K, but the lower price guy that I really like tomorrow, especially against a lefty bat, is Hunter Pence. I think that 4.5K, especially with the production that he's producing, is a little bit too low, and for me, Hunter Pence is a great option tomorrow as well to complete the Texas stack. Now, another pitcher that I want to attack is going to be Joe Musgrove. If we look at some of the numbers starting off the year, pretty decent, 32, a 22, and a 19. And then we saw the regression. Started giving up a little more runs. We had a 5-run game here, a -7 points against Oakland. So I think somebody that you can attack tomorrow that might get overlooked is Joe Musgrove. Somebody that I want to definitely target here. For me, if you're going to be targeting Musgrove, Matt Carpenter makes a lot of sense. At 4K seems too cheap. Almost a plug and play for me. It doesn't even change the average remaining player that you have for the most part. I think that if you wanted to go Ozuna or DeYoung, DeYoung seems massively overpriced for me. Ozuna seems overpriced as well, so I think I want to kind of come off of those players. I do like Paul Goldschmidt, who's kind of been on a cold spell recently, but I think can really turn it around here against Musgrove. And another player I really like is Colton Wong at 4,100. Hasn't been having the best games recently, fantasy point-wise, but the lefty bat against the right-handed pitching of Joe Musgrove, to me, is just a dream matchup that I think you won't want to miss. Same with Carpenter. So for me, those are going to be the players that I want to lock down as far as a cheaper stack that you can look at off of the Houston, Texas game. Last stack that I want to look at before we go ahead and call this a day is going to be the Seattle Mariners. Now, I want to go ahead and jump over here really quick to J.A. Happ's numbers for 2019 the Yankees. 5.04 xFIP, 38.7% home run rate with a 42.3% fly ball rate and a 17.3% home run rate. By no means has J.A. Happ been the pitcher that he was last year. The numbers have not been there. Only one game over 20, barely over 20, and the price is starting to regress, going down to 8.1K, which is incredibly low. And I think that the stack actually for Seattle is pretty cheap. If you really look and find value here, Tim Beckham has been absolutely incredible this year for the Mariners. 7 homers, 271 average, right-handed hitter against a lefty bat in Happ that has not been pitching well. For me, that's a plug and play, as well as Ryan Healy, who is 3.7K, which makes absolutely no sense. I understand the hitting production hasn't been there as of recent, but that always has to regress and come back up at some point. So I think Ryan Healy as well is another play as well from the Mariners. And lastly, if you did want to make your way to the higher price points of the Mariners, I think Domingo Santana and Edwin Encarnacion make the most sense to complete the stack. I don't think any lefties here really benefit from going up against J.A. Happ, but Encarnacion has been on an absolute tear recently, 16-7, 21-16. I mean, he's hit 3 homers in the past 4 games, 11 homers on the season. I think Encarnacion is a great play, as well as Domingo Santana. But for me, the values here are Tim Beckham and Ryan Healy at sub 4K, which to me is quite shocking. I know they hit lower in the bat orders, around roughly 6th or 7th in the bat order. But I think that these are some players that you can target on a stack that might get overlooked. So let me complete what I would play. This is roughly what my lineup is going to look like come closer to lock. I think that plugging in Altuve here leaves you roughly 4,250 left for bats. I would probably see myself trying to fit in Joey Gallo because I think that that's going to be one of the biggest locks. You might have to fight between Springer and Gallo. If you can't go Gallo, I would definitely go with Hunter Pence, who I think is another person that could absolutely mash off lefties, and then gives you roughly 4K left for you to pick between these. Now, this is just a sample. This is not going to be 100% what my lineup looks like tomorrow, but I do think that you have to sort of play around with the Houston, Texas game is going to be, in my opinion, pretty equal with Pittsburgh and St. Louis for the highest run total. I definitely think that the Texas side is probably going to be a little bit more favored with Wade Miley, but the Rangers do play better away, and so do the Houston Astros play better at home. So I think Altuve and Springer are probably my favorite options tonight. You can play with the catcher as well to try and drop the price and get Gallo in there, because I do think Gallo is an absolute lock if you were to take these away. For me, this is what I would try and play with to see if you can make this work, playing with the pitchers as well. But I think Gallo and Springer are going to be my top options tomorrow. Now, as always on this channel and this podcast, we do a dinger of the day. Who's going to hit a home run of the day? 2 days ago, we picked Kevin Kiermaier. Did not go yard, but put up 9 fantasy points at 4K, pretty much reaching value and might being a little bit exceeding. Had a stolen base upside from Kiermaier there. So for me, with the way that tomorrow is slated, I'm going to go with Joey Gallo as my dinger of the day, as my high-priced option, and my lower-ish priced option, if there is to be one, I would go Tim Beckham. I know I don't have him plugged into the lineup right now. Let me plug him in at 3.8K. I would go with Tim Beckham to complete the two dingers that I would pick. For me, Gallo is going to be the biggest lock and will be the thumbnail of this video. He's been on an absolute tear lately. If you look at the recent stats here, it's actually kind of stupid. Just 12 homers on the season, 28 RBIs, 1.106 OPS, 11.7 fantasy points per game. He's literally reaching value just on average. So I think that the Rangers are going to be somewhere you're going to want to look and attack a weak Wade Miley. Now, if you did enjoy this video and this breakdown, watching me kind of roll through my lineup and what kind of my thought process is, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and or if you're on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to the podcast. You can stay up with all of the videos that get uploaded. We will have a few more uploads coming up this week, so stay tuned for that. And if you enjoyed the video, drop a like, do whatever you do, spread it around to all your friends, and I appreciate all the support. Peace.